Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. This is Tom from Third Tom Thoughts, and we are here today to discuss faith and reason, science and religion, Galileo and the Roman Catholic Church, the age of enlightenment, and the Dark Ages. Two poles, two opposites, so distant they could never coincide like magnets. They repel off each other, yeah? Maybe. Or maybe not. But with another angle, like magnets, perhaps if we flip them around, they're not opposites. Not necessarily, not absolutely. What we call reason and what we call faith are two unavoidable parts of what it means to be you, of what it means to be human. Let's define some terms. And similarities between different kinds of things. Our ability to use our mental space to determine what is and what is not. Reason is abstract thinking. It's our ability to acquire all of the various kinds of sense data coming in and put it together self-consciously in new ways, imaginative ways, ways that can actually change how we live. It's certainly a sort of essential quality of human nature. Perhaps it's even uniquely human. There are three great examples of our reasoning capability. The first is deductive reasoning. You might recognize a syllogism like this. All cats are mortal. Zephyr is a cat. Therefore, Zephyr is mortal. Sad but true. There's no other conclusion that can be reached. If you have a triangle, it's got to have three sides. You can't have a square triangle. If you've got a bachelor, he has to be unmarried. You can't have a married bachelor. Otherwise, you get a contradiction, the ultimate enemy of rational thought. That's why these truths are often called a priori truths. A priori meaning they are known ahead of time. They are self-evidently deducible. You don't need to go out and make observations about them. Second, there's inductive reasoning. It's a type of synthetic judgment because it means you have to go out and combine parts. You have to observe things. You have to then draw conclusions from the things you've observed. For example, this eraser, I can drop it 100 times, I could drop it 1,000 times, I could drop it 10,000 times. Every time it falls, leading me to the conclusion that such things, when released, will fall. You might recognize this as the fundamental logic behind all of science. It is really the beating heart of the scientific method, our ability to go out and observe phenomena in the world and draw future conclusions about what will happen because of what we have seen happen, what we have tested. This ability to test things, to look at the world, draw in data, build even better machines to sense even better data, and then draw better and better generalized conclusions about the world has been the ally of humanity since the Greeks discovering the size of the planet with sticks and shadows, to the latest, to me, indecipherable acquisitions of knowledge stolen from the quantum realm. Therefore, this kind of knowledge is often called post-priori truths, meaning after the fact, acquired by the connection of experiences. The eraser falls enough times, and you can draw a conclusion about the future. The third kind of reasoning is what we call abductive judgment. Abductive judgment is the reasoning of a jury in a courtroom, or what you would do if you were walking through the forest and you saw a piece of litter on the ground. Yeah? You can't go back and rerun tests. You can't try again and again to see, oh, did the guy murder him this time? Oh, who left the litter there? Inductivity doesn't work, but nor can you deduce the truth. It's not obvious. It's not self-evident how this got here or whether this guy did a crime or not. And so what abductive reasoning allows us to do is explain the most with the least amount of assumptions. That's a very particular kind of reasoning. So when you're sitting on the jury, you don't start making wild assumptions like, oh, he acquired a spear and he stabbed him through in the ocean. And that'd be ridiculous, right? You look at what evidence you have and try to make the best conclusion. When you're in the forest and you see the piece of trash, you don't go, well, that must have just popped into existence here. Aliens must have left that behind. No, you assume that the McDonald's container is in fact left there by someone similar to you who just simply is too selfish and whether it's deductive or inductive or abductive or any other kind of ductive, we are always trying to understand things, to make sense of things. As Thomas Aquinas put it, man is not perfectly happy so long as something remains for him to desire and seek. The perfection of any power is determined by the nature of its object. And now the object of the intellect is what a thing is, i.e. the essence of a thing. Wherefore the intellect attains perfection in so far as it knows the essence of a thing. Now what's very interesting is whether this is limited to human beings, right? Have you seen monkeys use tools? Have you seen elephants have funeral rituals? I mean, your pet seems pretty smart, right? They seem to make logical choices sometimes, but look. That's going to be another video. Got to be another video. What matters here is that human beings use reasoning, abductive, inductive, deductive, to determine the relationship of causes and effects, the connection of ideas, the relationship of principles in order to generalize a response to the world. So, I mean, a video over, right? We've talked about everything that could possibly relate to human being. I don't know if there's anything else. It's the problem of axioms, inductivity, and other minds calling. Hello? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So wait. So what you're saying is deduction relies entirely on the pre-existing architecture of the mind and fundamental assumptions about the nature of the world that can't be itself understood by deduction? No, induction? You're telling me that induction cannot reliably predict the future because it's based entirely on unfalsifiable data about the past that doesn't in any way necessarily inflect upon the future? I mean, after all, they do say that the chicken expects their food every day until the day that they're... No, not abduction too, not abduction. You're telling me abduction is also founded in a fundamental trust about the nature of the world around you, and that regularity is the order of space and time, and that other people operate like you operate and have minds and mental spaces like you? No way. Weird guy. Let's talk about faith. Just like when talking about reason, with faith we want to be specific. So let's get our definitions from probably the most influential in history, the three great monotheist traditions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. In Christianity, in the Greek New Testament, you get this word pistis, which comes from patho, means to be persuaded, and it has to do with trust, commitment, allegiance. Trust would be a great way to translate the word even instead of faith, because it's about this relational concurrence. Now this makes sense because while the New Testament was written in Greek, it's coming out of a Hebrew context. And in the Hebrew, in the Tanakh, the word always translated in English as faith is hemet or hemat. And those two words have to do with fidelity, with loyalty, with faithfulness to God, to this great ultimate reality to which one owes oneself. The great example in the Tanakh is Abraham, who has this not absent, abstract, unprovable belief, as many often call faith, but has a commitment to act based on what he has experienced. We'll come back to this. In Islam, it's a very similar idea, iman.
And Iman has to do with the peace and the calmness that comes from reliance on God. It's most famous for being a part of the 6 articles of faith in Islam. Your Iman is this peace of mind, this harmony of being that comes from reliance on the ultimate being. This ancient way of speaking about faith might stand a bit in tension with how you have heard faith talked about in many modern senses. Often it's synonymized with thoughtless belief, or even belief against thinking, against evidence, against arguments. Despite all evidence to the contrary, you still choose to believe this, and we call that faith. But I think these more ancient considerations of faith that's about loyalty, that's about trust, that's about allegiance, that's about commitment, have something very, very important to teach us. Yeah, think about your own life. Think about your life all the time, yeah? You're doing some sort of trust, some sort of commitment, some sort of allegiance. Even when it's just you telling your friend you're going to meet them somewhere. Just by planning that out, you can't go there and prove that they'll be waiting for you at such and such a time in such and such a place. What do? You trust. You have faith in your friend that they will be there. Not because you have no evidence. You've got evidence. They've always been there. Nevertheless, perhaps it is the case that you are faithing all the time.
Let's explore this further. Huston Smith, noted scholar of religion, in his 2001 book, Why Religion Matters, wrote, "Wherever people live, whenever they live, they find themselves faced with 3 inescapable problems. How to win food and shelter from their natural environment, the problem nature poses, how to get along with one another, the social problem, and how to relate themselves to the total scheme of things, the religious problem. If this third issue seems less important than the other 2, we should remind ourselves that religious artifacts are the oldest that archaeologists have discovered." Let's use Huston's 3 categories to see how faith and reason apply on all levels of human existence. Number 1, the nature problem. You gotta live, right? You gotta grind. You gotta get that food, get that shelter, get that water, and figure out how to do those things better and better and better. That's what science does. Science helps us to build up these systems that enable us to acquire the resources we need to live better. Observe, research, hypothesize, test, analyze, peer review, and then start again. A self-checking process that helps regulate and share our thinking and experiences. It's the ultimate application of reason. Science is a great and grand success of the human mind. And we'd be in a much worse place without it. But can the scientific method test the scientific method? As Friedrich Nietzsche warned, our understanding of the world is but a mobile army of metaphor, metonymies, and anthropomorphisms. Science is interpretation and arrangement of the world by our requirement and not an explanation. According to him and many others, science is something we project on the world. After all, it comes out of our brains that didn't evolve to seek out truth. They evolved to survive. Think of how restricted our senses are. Think of how little we actually can feel about the universe. I can taste and I can taste and touch and smell, but radio waves, Wi-Fi waves, radiation, what is out there that our senses are just not equipped to recognize? That's some scary shit. Well, how do we know that science is not just our projection on the world from brains that are just struggling to survive? Nietzsche is talking about nothing other than a blind spot, and not just any blind spot, the literal blind spot that we all have in our own eyes. You see, there's a space on the back where no light hits because there's no rods and cones to receive it. Instead, it's where your optic nerve plugs into your brain. But that means there's a space in your vision that you can't actually see. Your brain, however, just fills it in. We are literally interpreting and organizing the world before we are even consciously aware of it. Our body is already doing interpretation. What else could it be doing? What if there was a little tiny creature always hiding in that spot? Another philosopher concerned like Nietzsche was 18th century Scottish empiricist David Hume. And David Hume says that we should look at the pool balls, see how they're hit, see how they move. And they move every which way differently depending on angle and momentum and so on, but they react in fundamentally the same way every time. He warns that it happens so many times that habit and custom, we come to expect that it always will. But in his treatise of human nature, Hume wrote, "Thus, not only our reason fails us in the discovery of the ultimate connection of causes and effects, but even after experience has informed of their constant conjunction, 'tis impossible for us to satisfy ourselves by our reason. Why we should extend that experience beyond those particular instances which have fallen under our observation." This is the problem of induction, that our reason can't prove that things will always continue as they always have. That we have to make a sort of assumption, or to be fancy, an axiom that says that this is how it will work. This is, for example, what math lies on. A pile of axioms that then allows us to do math, but they themselves can't be proven by math. See, we've got to do thinking, we've got to do rationality, we've got to do science, but eventually we find as we dig down that our rationality has to rest on something not quite irrational. Maybe we could say irrational or non-rational. It's not against reason, but it's something that's not quite reason either. Maybe we could call it, these axioms, these assumptions, something we trust, something we are committed to, something we... a faith. Maybe faith? Think of it like a sandwich. On the bottom, you've got the basic assumptions you have to trust in to get to the yummy, delicious ingredients in the middle, the reasoning, yeah? And if this was a sandwich I was going to use for more than a prop, it'd be piled high with some lettuce, some tomatoes, some pickle, onion, anyway. Then on the top again, more bread. And that's the commitment to act on what you've reasoned out. And like the bread, faith part often goes underappreciated. Get used to the metaphor. We're going to be using the sandwich more. Humans! Oh, can't live with them, can't live without them. The social problem, see, is that you only know you. You're the one who feels your inner feelings, your experiences, your thoughts. You don't feel the thoughts and feelings of other people. This is the problem of other minds. You don't know the other minds like you know yourself. So how could you possibly trust them? The social problem is, how could you possibly get along with other people who all the rationality in the world could not necessarily make sense of, could not necessarily understand, because to understand a human means to understand them from the inside. Those inner experiences, the self-conception of the world. See, to do the simple things of human life, to live in the same home together, to go hunt for food together, to sleep at night around other people, that requires at least a basic sense of solidarity, of co-feeling, of knowing they're like you, and therefore you can trust them. You can connect with them. This is the basis for all cooperation, all love, all compassion, all society. You can never prove that another person won't harm you, hurt you, wound you. It's always a risk to reach out and connect with another person, to feel them like you feel yourself. But it's a necessary risk to make human social culture possible. It's entirely rational in the modern Western world to feel the constant alienation, separation, suspicion that we all do, the division that defines our lives. Because we're driven by systems, political, economic, technological, that demand competition, that demand only a few can win, can succeed, can get that safety and shelter and wealth. Everyone else is not seen as someone like you, but as a possible enemy, someone who might take what is yours, someone who might threaten your space if it means benefiting theirs. That's the separation that's divided humanity for ages. And this is the basis for all human society, culture, cooperation, solidarity. It's trust, what Adam Seligman, professor at Boston University, calls moral credit. It's always a risk to reach out, to work with other people, to connect with other people. There's no telling. You can't rationally work out whether they'll hurt you, harm you, betray you. It takes a motion of trust to make society possible. And that's why society today feels so divisive. It feels alienated. It feels separated. Why? Because we've built our culture, we've built our economy, we've built our politics around systems that alienate us, systems that separate us, make us all competitors in some giant race for a job or for profit in the next quarter. And so if you want to survive, if you want to be a good competitor, you can't let that fellow feeling, that risk get in your way. If it means stepping on other people, taking from other people, using other people, abusing the planet, manipulating systems, you'll do it. And that generates an awful feeling of separation among people, division. Yeah, a sense that you're being used, a sense you're being exploited. Where there is no trust, the social problem cannot be solved. Rationality helps us live together. It builds political structures and laws. It manufactures commercial and trade opportunities. It builds up technology that allows us to hear each other from great distances. But at basis, it takes something not irrational, but irrational, trans-rational, to make it possible. That trust, that extension of self, that fellow feeling that overcomes the problem of other minds. Whether it's living entirely virtual lives on the endless fields of online horrors and amusements, enchantments, the Stygian depths that leave you feeling futile and callous, hollowed out from the inside by the relentless calculations of individual performance and the infinite unsatisfying superficial mountains of content and piles of advertisements selling all things all the time, where it's just as easy to engage in the deepest perversities known to man as it is to present a work of overwhelming beauty, anonymized, isolated, yet connected to every event and person on earth, yet none of them human, our technology transforming us over the generations, alone as a sand grain, a distant star, an ocean droplet. The social problem in a nutshell. While we can build better rational structures, better technology, better laws, better economics at base, it'll only work if we can feel another person on a level deeper than rationality, on a level that we would call faith. And it's not like we only need faith to foundationalize human society. All sorts of aspects of human society itself are just simply faith. Money, democracy, private property, the rule of law, all of those things only exist in our minds. They don't exist as independent things out in earth. They exist because we believe that they exist, because we have faith in them, because they are conduits, representations of the faith we all have in each other. So if from friendship to perception to money, you are a person of reason and faith, what does this leave us about religion? And so that brings us to what most people mean when they talk about faith. Some kind of belief in some higher power, something called God. That's a little harder to demonstrate than whether the pool balls will go in the same sort of way, or whether your friend will meet you for dinner, or democracy will work or not.
Now, when people talk about faith, they often mean this sort of blind, thoughtless thing. A faith that is not just irrational, but at times anti-rational, that you hold a belief regardless of arguments and evidence against it. But I hope that you've seen the way we've talked about faith so far. It's something deeper than that. And I believe it's the job of philosophy and theology to take the unthinking, ignorant, common faith that we all have at all times and use the doubts and questions and challenges of reason to transform thoughtless faith into thoughtful faith, considered faith, faith that... Hello? Hi, buddy. How's it going? You called me in the middle of a video. So what do we mean by a religious problem, a religious sense of faith? Recall how Smith put it, that we must somehow relate ourselves to the total scheme of things. And so you've got somewhere inside of you what we would call an ultimate concern, an ultimate belief, something regarding an ultimate reality. It might be as small as your whims or as big as Kant's categorical imperative. Maybe it's about your nation. Maybe it's about your position in a market, your amount of wealth and success. Maybe it's about a chaotic sense of nihilism or a deep humanistic hope for our species. Maybe it's put into technology. Maybe it's put into a traditional religion. Somehow, some way, someplace, you have an ultimate concern. This is how theologian Paul Tillich described it. Faith is a state of being grasped by unconditional concern, which concerns oneself unconditionally. For Tillich, this kind of faith is in an ultimate reality which makes sense of everything else, and once it grasps us, demands a total surrender of our will and being. Faith is therefore the thing that draws us between the finite that we know and the infinite which we imagine deep within. This faith demands things like doubt because doubt demonstrates the seriousness, the ultimate concern of this faith. For Tillich, faith exists in a totally different realm of human being than reason. It can't even be applied to its categories. Faith is that which, in a religious sense, moves beyond us. If philosophy is the rational analysis of the universe, then faith is the question of commitment. What do you live for? What do you die for? So in this sense, in this religious sense, faith is that bottom piece of bread. It's that thing that underlines, underwrites, foundationalizes everything else. It's that ultimate concern that defines your life. But it's also that top piece of bread. And I think, exempling the top piece of bread, there's no one better to speak about than old John Brown. John Brown was an antebellum American anti-abolitionist. Wait, that doesn't make sense. John Brown was an antebellum American abolitionist. He fiercely believed, intensely, that slavery was demonically evil, that God was so opposed to it, that he didn't merely speak about it like it was some impoliteness needing resolution, but rather treated it as a devastating and cruel infection. John Brown was willing to kill and eventually be killed himself in order to end slavery in the United States. On December 2nd, 1859, John Brown was hung for attempting to fund, organize, and arm a slave rebellion starting at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Many people in American history, like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, reasoned out slavery's evil, even while they themselves were still slavers their whole lives. John Brown, however, had such a deep, trusting commitment to the idea of slavery as evil. His faith demanded that he act about it. It was not just a matter of reason, it was a matter of commitment, of risk, of sacrifice, of allegiance. John Brown took the leap of faith. Another philosopher absolutely essential to this idea of religious faith was the 18th century Dane Soren Kierkegaard. And Soren Kierkegaard argued that human beings went through different stages in life, different levels of faith. First, he says, comes the aesthetic stage, pure hedonism, where we're each seeking self-satisfaction. something that creates, for example, slavery. Then, he argues, comes an ethical stage where we reason out a particular belief as your moral duty. You think it through. We might place Jefferson or Washington here. They realized their ethical duty was against slavery, but they were only at the ethical stage. They only recognized the rational thought. There's a final stage, Kierkegaard argues, the religious stage, where you enter into full commitment. Kierkegaard was a fierce advocate in his day for faith against a philosophical culture, especially in Germany, that reason could encompass all, that the final destiny of humanity, its ultimate utopia, could be achieved by human beings coming to recognize the entire universe in its rational, mechanistic glory. But Kierkegaard wanted to emphasize the position of faith, that to be a full human being was not merely a rational thing. It required eventually a commitment, a leap of faith, that our subjectivity as human beings meant that we can't possibly exist just as reasonable beings. We need to have faith. We need to have commitment. We need to have commitment, dedication, trust, even in the face of doubt, even in the face of uncertainty. At the very same time, Kierkegaard said, as we feel uncertainty and doubt, we still must commit ourselves, or else we could never live as humans. In one of his 1843 journals, Kierkegaard wrote, "It is really true what philosophy tells us, that life must be understood backwards. But with this, one forgets the second proposition, that it must be lived forwards. A proposition which, the more it is subjected to careful thought, the more it ends up concluding precisely that life at any given moment cannot really ever be fully understood, exactly because there is no single moment where time stops completely in order for me to take position to do this, going backwards." Faith, then, for Kierkegaard, is precisely the religious stage of life where you have transcended the pure hedonism of indulgence and the ethical stage where you've simply reasoned out the right and wrong thing to do. The religious stage is the stage of commitment, the stage of the leap, the stage where one actually lives. You can't reason yourself into trusting your senses and, by association, therefore, into science. You can't reason yourself into trusting your friends and family. You can't reason your way out of the anxiety and despair and possibility of being the limited, fragile creature that you are. Reason only takes you part of the way. The actual dangerous, risky commitment, that takes something else. You can't even reason yourself into reasoning. Faith happens first, and faith happens last, after reasoning is complete. We are stupendous creatures, made of both reason and faith. We can't exist without reasoning, and we can't exist without faithing. That's why one of my favorite authors, Leo Tolstoy, he said that religion is the theory of the practice of the future. What does he mean by that? That religion is systematized faith. It's organized faith. It's faith connected into some sort of worldview. I think we all have one way or another. And that worldview, that faith, that organization is the way we make the future happen. It's our theorizing, our faith that creates the next step. We can reason our way to it, but then to actually create it, to live it, that takes faith. That takes faith. Oh, there you are. So what's the point? So let's face the elephant in the room. Has it been the case that faith, religion, and reason, science, have clashed, that they've made contradictory claims, and at times even materially harmed and hampered each other? Well, on the one hand, an idea like the Dark Ages is complete ahistorical nonsense. It didn't happen. There was always scientific development. It was invented by historians like Petrarch, original hipsters who thought now was way too lame and we got to get back to the glories of the Roman Empire. But on the other hand, it is undeniable that religious fundamentalists of all stripes still currently deny well-evidenced, well-argued science. in biology, in archaeology, in astronomy, in geology, in Galileo. He was put under house arrest more for annoying the Pope than for his heliocentricity, but it was still persecution nonetheless. And today, cults and psychics and megachurch leaders all demand your unquestioning allegiance, and they call that faith. The Islamic Golden Age may have formed algebra, and Hindu India developed the concept of zero, and the Catholic priest Georges Lemaitre, he was the first to develop the Big Bang Theory. But people, on the other hand, still refuse to utilize their critical thought, to examine their biases, to self-interrogate their belief systems, and they defend their ignorance by calling it faith. These things are true. That conflict does happen. But I hope that our definition of faith and reason has helped show that we're not talking about that. We're talking about something deeper, that use of faith is a poor, impoverished definition. We're talking about how you have to have faith in order to even begin reasoning. That something as simple as cause and effect takes faith to overcome the problem of induction, our natural problem. We are talking about how you have to have faith in order to live together with each other. Marriage, friendship, societal health, all predicated on each human being willing to trust, to co-feel, to recognize another as themselves and treat them like it. The social problem. We're talking about how you have to have faith in something ultimate, something that defines your very being, something that many call God. Because whatever you commit your faith to, whether it's nationalism, the market, technological advancement, science, a traditional religion, some spiritual sense of yourself, something small, something large, whatever it is that contextualizes your life in the broadest sense, relates you as a schema to the whole, whatever it is that leads you to act, that thing functions as God for you, and that is where your faith resides. It's the damn sandwich again. The convictions that underlie your reasoning and the commitment that then acts upon what you've been reasoning. All towards whatever this ultimate concern is. You can't escape it. Even when you don't have faith in a traditional religion, you still have faith in something. You still have some ultimate concern. Maybe it's a lot like jumping in a pool for the first time. You can give a kid all the reasons in the world to do it, why it's fun, why it's safe, but unless they have trust in the person with them, that is a sort of allegiance, a sort of beginning assumption, an axiom of trust. Those reasons, it's going to fall on fearful ears. They're not going to believe you. And then even if they agree with the rationality of jumping, even if they come to a conclusion that you're right, that it's safe and it's fun and they're going to have a great time, they still have to commit. They have to make those reasons their own and then act on them. And only then can they jump. As children, we all started out as being made completely and totally of faith. I mean, from the moment you open your eyes, you are completely reliant on all those around you. Utterly, absolutely. A child is always reaching out, trying to connect, trying to unite, trying to commit. Psychologically speaking, we know that at least for many months, if not even longer, many years, that a child doesn't even fully distinguish their own internal experience from those of other people. A child lives completely by faith. We all started out full of trust, looking to connect with others. And then over time, various forms of death got their hold on us. Our little hands reaching out were slapped down. Our open hearts that met abuse and pain. Our trusts, they were betrayed. We harden up. We become ignorant of our faiths. But we can't forget. We're always still longing for that understanding and that commitment. This leads me to one final question we can ask about faith and reason. Does my son believe in me? He's only a year or two old. Reasonably, he knows nearly nothing about me. He doesn't know my favorite food, Chinese of course, or the particularities of my political opinions, or the massive crush that I had on Misty from Pokemon when I was a kid. My son certainly has some primitive beliefs about me, but nothing we could describe seriously. Yet I have a deep and intimate relationship with him, and him with me. He trusts me explicitly, totally. He has absolute faith in the experience he has had of me. And he is most happy, most satisfied, most complete when he is enjoying that trust. My son has some basic reasoning, of course, and it's growing every day as he observes and takes in new knowledge. But first and foremost, he has faith. He trusts what little he does know, and he acts accordingly, without reservation, just as Kierkegaard desired. By his faith, my son receives love and shares that with others. And because he isn't afraid, he can gather knowledge. He can test the world. He can trust others with love. He can doubt. He can be confused. He can find his place in the largest whole, because he is committed every moment 100%. Look, nothing can be proven absolutely. We're brains stuck inside of our experience. We can't step out and test to see if it's independently true or not. So we trust. We trust that it is, and it works. It works damn good. But nonetheless, it's a kind of trust. That conviction about what we believe and where, and then the commitment to act on it. Commitment to actually risk something. So the question is not, do you have faith or do you have reason? You have both. The question is your reasoning sound and strong? And what do you have faith in? What ultimate reality, what ultimate concern, what cause, what belief is your final faith held in? As the great philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein put it, trusting is prior to doubting. The latter has to be taught.
Dogmatic, doctrinal. Wait a second. Wait a second. Somebody wrote Harambe here. Look at that. Do you see Harambe in a heart? Oh, so impious. Right in the pew. I swear to you, I didn't know this was here. Oh, Harambe, that one in whom we all have such faith.